Joining us now, he's live in Washington, D.C. I'm in Richmond. He was here a lot. He was a former House of Delegates member, Congressman, Republican, 2nd District of Virginia. Scott Taylor. Scott, Happy New Year. Good to have you with us, man.
Good morning, John. Happy New Year. How's it going in session? I miss those days.
Well, I know it's always fun when it starts. Kirk Cox, the new speaker, and 15 new members on the Democratic side of the House. So it's a new governor coming in, so it's going to be a lot of fun, no question. All right, Scott Taylor, I got to get to a couple of key issues here. Let's start with DACA. And you came out the other day and said that you're in favor of finding a way to solve this problem because, look, everybody knows we're not going to take 11 million people whose parents took them to the United States and put them on Greyhound and ship them somewhere out of the country. Everybody knows that's not going to happen. So now the issue becomes, what do we do? How do we solve it? And you came out the other day in favor of kind of an amnesty situation. Are you in favor of just a standalone DACA fix, or are you in favor of what the president is attempting to do, which is tie that to comprehensive, permanent legislative immigration reform?
So I'm with the president. There's been a lot of noise out there, and quite frankly, my position has been distorted, if you will. And I'm not for amnesty. I'm not for DREAM Act, which would just be, a permanent fix for the 800,000 or so that are in the DACA program, standalone. I'm not for that. I've never been for that. So I'm exactly where the president is in terms of dealing with limiting chain migration, getting some E-Verify requirements on employers, getting some security for the border, and perhaps money for the wall in that standalone bill as well. I've never was for putting it in a spending package. I think it should be by itself. And like you said, you're in the General Assembly there. We have this great rule in Virginia legislation that means, things have to be germane. So if you put a bill up, it's got to has to do with the actual bill and not other things. So I think it's important that we have a standalone bill that deals with the 4 principles that are being negotiated right now with the White House, with leadership, House leadership, and Senate leadership, Democrats and Republicans. And that the 4 general principles are, number 1, border security, number 2, chain migration, 3, the visa lottery program, and 4, having a permanent legislative fix for those 800,000 folks who are in the system already. They're they're assimilated. They're the ones that were brought here by their parents. It's controversial because people don't want that to be done. But the reality is, as you said, they're not going to send them home, and no one in leadership or in the White House is calling for that.
Right. And so when we're talking about a DACA fix as part of an overall legislative reform of our immigration policies, and this is where you have to separate this out, Scott Taylor, and I agree with you 100%. There's a lot of misinformation going out there on both sides, right and left. I mean, I've got friends of mine that are hardline conservatives on immigration, and they have completely distorted the president's message and said he's sold us out, he's for amnesty, no wall. That's just lies. I mean, none of that is true.
So let me touch on that. So, and this is defend the president. Amnesty, by its very definition, you look it up in the dictionary, it says that you're for a whole class of people, you're forgiving them for bad deeds, right, for things that they did wrong. This specific class, because the president's speaking about the folks that are in the system that were brought here by their parents. And yes, what President Obama did was illegal. It should have been in congressional purview. It shouldn't have been done unilaterally by the executive branch. I agree with the president 100% on that, and I'm glad that he's pushed it back down for us to make those tough decisions. But there is misinformation, and this president is very committed to, as am I. I'm a national security guy. I want to know who the hell's coming in here, and I want to make sure things are vetted and that we have border security. So they're committed to getting border security, dealing with chain migration, dealing with the visa lottery program, which, by the way, John, in 2013, many Democrat senators voted for all 3 of those things. And
right.
And then, of course, having some sort of permanent fix. And for the folks that are in the system, that are in that population who are assimilated, they all speak English, they're either working or they're in school or they're in the military
right.
and they've had a background check. If they're a criminal, they're not even in the program anymore. They get kicked out of it. So that's what's happening. And things are getting distorted. You have the hard right, and you've seen me being attacked by what's amazing by what the president terms as a swamp, in D.C., and some of these groups that literally raise money off of our donors and then attack Republicans and then pay themselves handsome salaries. Like I got attacked by Numbers USA, and the government relations person at Numbers USA makes over $300,000 a year. I've never seen her meet with anyone in D.C. government relations. So their hardline stance. They raise money using emotions and our donors, and throw out misinformation and lies, and then pay themselves handsomely. And that's the swamp. That's what the swamp is, because it stops folks like the president from his agenda and getting things done.
Right. So let's just be very clear. So when we're talking about a quote-unquote DACA fix or solving this problem, we're talking about a number of people. The number's about 800,000 people. These are people who have gone through the application system. They've applied for their work visas or they've applied for their temporary status. They've filled out the forms. You know who they are. You know where they are. They've played by the rules given to them by the federal government in the form of Barack Obama's executive order. So he gave it to them. So they played by those rules. So look.
That's correct.
Look, their parents broke the law. There's no question. But what the president is attempting to do, and where all this misinformation is, it's like he did with tax reform. He's attempting to get a long-standing legislative reform solution that can't be changed without a new vote from Congress and a new president signing something else that changes legal immigration policy as we know it today by getting rid of chain migration, which is a disaster. I mean, that's how it works now. They want to get rid of that. They want to eliminate the scam lottery visas. They want to get rid of that, right? That's gone. That's part of the deal. And then he's like, look, you can't even do this unless you secure the southern border of the United States. So part of that is added security, added agents, technology, drones, and funding for a wall, which is the centerpiece of my campaign. So the president says, give us that. So we have a permanent immigration reform solution. And as part of that, I'm willing to say for these 800,000, here is a pathway to permanent residency in the United States. Now,
That's
what
correct.
the
So
heck is the matter with that?
This disincentive for future illegal immigration, which is absolutely necessary. So the folks that are like super hard line, like, oh, it's just amnesty and you're just going to have more of it and more of it. Well, that's exactly what he said. We, not just the president, but I and we are trying to avoid. So you're trying to put measures in place to reduce future illegal immigration and get, like you said, a permanent legislative fix. And you need, whether we like it or not, you need Democrat votes to be able to make that happen. And that's what we're doing. So that's actually, I think it's a good thing. And it's give and take in politics, give and take, and that's a good deal. So quite frankly, all the folks that are out there that are screaming, they should be happy with a permanent legislative fix that would not be able to be done otherwise.
Exactly. That is, we're saying the exact same thing. We need a permanent fix that, and look, the only person who can do this is Trump because of his hard line on immigration, and people like me trust him. Okay. It's like when Richard Nixon in 1970 went to China. Nobody else could go to China, but Richard Nixon at the time had a 40-year political history of being a strident anti-communist. So when Nixon went, hardliners, anti-communist hardliners, it was palatable to them because they trusted him on this issue. He's the only one that could have done that same thing. All right, now let's get to a tougher issue for you. Offshore drilling. On my show many months ago, you said, hey, you're in favor of looking for various piles of energy, and exploring offshore. The president, part of his energy agenda, wants to be able to dramatically increase offshore drilling, especially off the coast of Virginia. Now you've come out in opposition to that. It's going to cost 100,000 potential jobs. Why?
So my position this whole year has been neutral. However, as you said on your show, I want to know what's out there. So what is potentially there that doesn't impede on national security and all those things. So, however, I had to come up with a decision because, of course, with the announcement, now you have people are asking these questions. And I have to take into account national security. I have to take into account the tourism industry in Virginia Beach. As you very well know, our two biggest industries are military and tourism. So I have to take those into account, the fact that all localities are against it, and I have to listen to my people. I mean, I am a representative. I spoke to Secretary Zinke yesterday on the phone, as a matter of fact. He's a good friend of mine, and we're going to meet hopefully for a beer tonight, actually. But and he understands as well the political situation and the fact that the industry and organizations and city council in our area are just they're not for it. It's gone now. However, and he's committed to me, at least right now, that they're going to expedite looking to try to figure out what is there. And as you heard, I'd like to know what's there too. But and they're not looking at oil; they're looking at gas. So I don't know what's going to happen in terms of timeline for him. But I had to weigh all the information I have, which includes, of course, those who support and those who don't support it in my district, and I had to come up with a decision, and that's what I did.
Well, you are aware, though, right, that the U.S. Navy is not in opposition to any of this offshore drilling off of Virginia. They say it wouldn't.
John, they do have big problems with it. They do.
What are
they? Can't. I mean, there's some unofficial and official things, as you know, and but they do have issues with it.
All right. So
and now I will say that the Secretary is committed to having talks with them to try to hash things out. I spoke with him. Like I said, I spoke with him yesterday.
So we look at this, and I'm just a layman. We look at the 2nd District and we say, okay, any of the people that are opposed to this, they're not going to vote for you next November 6th anyway. So, I mean, it's not like changing your position is going to help you 100%. Win.
I mean, I talked to a lot of Republicans who are also in opposition as well. When you look at, when you think back at Drill Baby Drill and years ago when there are a lot of things that have changed, right? So back then, we wanted to be energy independent. We wanted to be pushing towards that. So do I. I think we should exploit our own resources. I still believe that. However, when you look at the Marcellus Shale, when you look at technologies in fracking, and the fact that the United States now is a net producer, that now we are an energy superpower once again, and there's tons of reserves of gas that are there. So the whole situation is different. And industry did come down. I think it was in 2000 and maybe 11 or 12 when Scott Ridgel brought them down. And then they spoke to officials and tourism industry, business folks and things like that, and they did not do a good job, quite frankly, of describing where the jobs are going to come from, where the supply chain is going to come from, where it's going to be. So there is a perception problem there. But, like I said, I have to weigh all the information that I have and come up with a decision that makes sense for the people that I represent, and that's what I came to the conclusion. But I disagree 100% that it's just Democrats that are opposed to this. In fact, I think there are a lot more Republicans than you know that are opposed to it.
The Virginia Beach Tourism Council, I mean, obviously tourism in your district, big deal. What are they saying? Why will this have a negative impact potentially on tourism in the beaches area?
The big worry that the tourism, not just the tourism industry, but the aquaculture industry on the Eastern Shore, the fishermen as well too, the localities, of course, they just believe that the risk is not worth the reward. If I could summarize it up. Sure, you have activist groups that are opposed to it, and environmentalist groups that would be opposed to it anyway. And more to your point, most likely they're probably not going to vote for me anyway.
Right.
But that's fine. I mean, I take them into account, but I have to take everything into account. And like I said, when I weighed the national security potential implications and training grounds, when I weighed the localities' decisions publicly for resolutions opposed to it, when I weighed the industry's opposition to it, that's where I came to my conclusion. And while I personally would love to, I still want to know what's out there. I do have to listen to my people because, in fact, I'm a representative.
Okay. Look, I understand what you're saying. One thing I just want to clarify, though, is when you said the tourism said the risk doesn't meet the reward, we don't know what the reward is because we don't know what's out there. It could be much bigger than they think it is. That's the only point that I want to make. But look, Scott Taylor, here's one thing that I appreciate. I appreciate the fact that you're willing to take a position, even though it might not be popular with various parts of your constituency. And you said you had to take a position. You took a position, and now you have to deal with it. Mm-hmm. But we'll see how it plays out. Obviously, there's a lot of benefits to finding this gas and to drilling and keeping prices down and creating jobs. And there's, to me, the reward outweighs that risk. But I get your position, and I understand it, and I appreciate your honesty about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're out of time. Scott Taylor, Congressman, 2nd District, Virginia, Republican. You can find more information on Scott. You can go to scotttaylor.us. I think, Scott, that's it, isn't it? scotttaylor.us?
scotttaylor.us. scotttaylor.us or taylor.house.gov. And always a pleasure, John. Thanks for having me on.